Okay, in this video, let's take a look at roles. Specifically, what makes roles highly configurable? So let's open up Path and log in real quick. Now, when we would first start your implementation, we'd have what we call a discovery call, and that's when you'd let us know all the different roles that you wanted us to set up. And for each role, you would tell us the tasks that those roles would be doing. So let's use loan officer, for example, in this video. So you tell us all the tasks that the LO is going to do, and then we would set up an LO role, and we would go turn off all the screens that that LO would not need. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to go into this Bobby Ewing loan. And so I've got a bunch of screens up here, and then also in this drop down. And let's say that you determine you're not going to do VA loans. So we want to turn that VA screen off. Super easy. We do that by going into our system admin role here, go into configurations, roles, and then I'm going to select my loan officer role, go into screens, go into my production screens here. Now we've got about 60 production screens, since data, summary, application, ERLA. I can kind of scroll through here to give you a quick glance, but any of these screens can be turned on or off. We're looking for that VA loan, which I believe is right here. I mean, not VA loan, VA screen. So to turn that off, what we would do is just click this little icon. So now it will say no access. And that's all we had to do in real time. We were able to turn that screen off. So if I go back to the loan officer role and go into that Bobby Ewing loan, you'll see the VA screen is now turned off. The loan officer doesn't have access to it. They're not doing VA loans. They don't need it. Um, so let's say that down the road you determine you do want to do VA loans, so you need to turn the screen back on. It's just as easy. You just go in your system admin role. And one thing that's nice about this is that you'll have access to all these admin screens, so you can turn the screens on or off as you want. You don't have to reach out to us to have us do that. And as you can see, it's super user friendly. It's very easy to do. So let's go back into our loan officer role here. Let's go into screens, and we'll go back into our production screens, VA, and we'll go ahead and click the icon to turn the VA screens on. Now, you'll notice when we go back into the loan that when I click into the VA screen, there's a bunch of tabs: the summary tab, addendum, worksheet, IRL, reasonable value, loan comparison. And any of these tabs can be turned off as well. So let's say that you want to give them access to the VA screen, but you don't want them to have access to the IRRL, just as example. So I click the little icon. Now that IRRL screen is turned off, no access. So let's go back and show you that real quick here. We're going to Bobby Ewing, and now the VA screen is back turned on, but when I go into it, the IRRL is turned off. Now, using the same principle of access, Path has buttons that can be configured the same way. At the bottom of every screen in Path, there's 15 buttons that are configured and built and ready to be utilized. Now, the same way in the discovery call where we'll identify the screens that you won't need and we'll turn those off, we're also going to go and turn off all the buttons, okay? And so that's why, like right now, you can see there's 15 custom buttons turned on, but in a production environment, we'd have all those turned off, and we only turn them on as needed. Now, there's 3 use cases that these custom buttons can be utilized. The first one would be to configure a button so that when you click it, it sends the loan to another department. Now, that's going to be something that we'll talk about in another video, so I'll table that for right now. But the other use cases do apply that for as far as this video goes. One use case would be turning a button on to view a document without having to leave this screen. And another use case would be to run an interface without having to use this screen. Because all the interfaces are found, they're easily accessible in the interfaces screen. You go here and you can run all your different interfaces. But utilizing these custom buttons, we can run an interface from any screen you want. So you don't have to go to that interface section. So let's go back to the VA. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go back into the system admin and turn off all the custom buttons, but we'll configure custom button 1 and custom button 2 to view VA documents and to run, let's say, DU, just as an example. Okay, so let's go into the system admin real quick and go back to configurations, roles, loan officer, go into screens, go into our production screens. We'll scroll down to the VA screen, and now we'll expand the summary tab. So that's how we're able to see all the different buttons that are available. And now let's start turning off the buttons. So just by clicking on the icon, it'll change from this little eye icon to a little slash indicating no access. It's turned the button off. So we'll turn those all off real quick here. And then for custom button 1 and 2, we'll leave those on. We'll go over here, and now we'll change the name. So for custom button 1, we'll call this AUS. And then we'll go down here, and now all the different interfaces that we would have set up on your Path account would be available to turn on for any screen. In this case, we're going to select DU. And yeah, I'll hit save. And so that button will be ready, and I'll demonstrate that when we go back into that screen. For custom button number 2, let's go ahead and configure that one to view, we'll just call it VA forms. And now we'll go ahead and select the document dropdown. So now we can see all the documents that are available in Path, as well as any custom documents. If you wanted to upload any custom documents, those also could be made available using a button here. But let's just scroll to our VA docs, and we'll just grab a couple, and we'll add those over here and hit select. And easy peasy. Now when we go back into that screen, I'll be able to click that button and view those documents without having to leave the screen. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention while we were here is that when you configure a button, you also can attach a business rule to it right here where it says business rule. And so when you do that, that's really nice. So that way, if you turn on a button and someone goes to click the button, maybe to view a document or to run like an interface, that's a better use case, to run an interface. You could create rules that certain data points had to be collected, so that way they couldn't run that that interface unless the data was collected, or whatever type of rule you wanted to tie to that button. Another really good use case is when you configure a button to send a loan to another department. You tie business rules to that button, indicating that like services have to be run, like credit, AUS, data has to be collected, and that prevents incomplete loans from moving forward. But yeah, let's go ahead and real quick. I just want to open up this window. Oh yeah. I knew there was one other thing I wanted to mention. Also, we can configure these buttons to turn on or off based on the status. So that way, if you want someone to have access to view a form or run an interface early in the process, the button can be turned on. But then when the loan moves further along into the workflow, those buttons can be hidden. So the button access is dynamic. All right, so let's go ahead and go back into the loan here real quick, and go to Bobby Ewing, and we'll go to that VA screen. And right here on the summary tab, if you notice, all those custom form buttons are now hidden. They're still there, and I say custom form buttons, I mean custom buttons. All those custom buttons are hidden. They're still there, they're just hidden. And so now here's that AUS button we configured. So when I click that, pop-up window opens, and I can go ahead and run AUS right here from this screen. And then VA forms, same thing. I click that button, and now I can view the VA forms right here from this screen. I don't have to go to the doc storage to view those forms. One other thing I mentioned that I can't remember, and I just want to make sure I covered it, talking about screen access. Screen access also can be controlled by role and loan status. So just to review, both the screen access that's being turned on or off and the buttons that are being turned on or off, they both can be configured by role and loan status. So just makes Path just super hyper highly configurable. But before we wrap up this video, there's two other concepts I wanted to talk about that are tied to roles. The first one is going to be dashboard. So if you look over here, this is a dashboard that I can open and close. There's 50 fields in a dashboard, and every role that we set up for you can tell us, these are the 50 data fields that are most important to me. So as an LO, they tell us, here's the 50 fields that are most important. We set those up in their dashboard. And then that way, as they're jumping around from screen to screen, the dashboard stays right there and follows them. So quick, easy access to see those 50 data points right there. And then additionally, let me go to my pipeline here real quick. Every role gets its own pipeline configuration. And what I mean by that is like every role can tell us the fields they want in their pipeline as far as the columns they want, the sequence of the columns, the widths of the columns. Because, like an LO, they're going to have specific data fields they want to see in their pipeline versus like an underwriter that would have different data points they want to see in their pipeline. So the pipeline, the dashboard, both are configurable by role. And also, just real quick, we have what's called pipeline alerts, which is all this color coding that you're seeing. And so the pipeline alerts will fire to alert you when like critical dates are approaching for compliance or documents expiring or locks expiring. And any of these pipeline alerts, those are also configurable by role. All right, well, that's going to conclude this video. I appreciate you watching. Please reach out to me with questions. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your time.